Thanks to everybody. When we planned this webinar as European chapter of Academy for Eating Disorder, we didn't consider what dramatically happened. Israel suffered an heavy terrorist attack that beheaded children and young people guilty only of having fun and asking to leave. We are close to Israel's friend for the attack that they suffered. It's an attack to every body of us. Today we talk about the Israel law on eating disorder. Israel is the first country that put on law the prevention of eating disorder. And so we can reflect, even if it's a dramatic period now, about what happened on eating disorder in Israel, thanks to Yael Latzer. Even in these heavy moments, she is demonstrating seriousness, competence, and determination, the determination that everybody of us need to have. Yael Latzer is professor in the Faculty of Social Workers in Haifa, and she leads also research on eating disorder for the Center for Psychiatry in Haifa too. She leads also an house, specifically house for eating disorder patients. And she is the vice president of the European chapter of the Academy. Thanks, Yael, for your courage and your presence. We are with you, and we explain our solidarity to you and to our friends. Thanks, Yael. Please.
Thanks, Umberto, very much. Indeed, I debated with myself whether to speak today at the webinar of the European chapter of eating disorder, as my heart is still bleeding with all the families that lost their loved ones and the survivors who have undergone trauma that we didn't face since Second World War. I eventually decided to come and lecture. As a profession, we know how important it is to receive support, how important it is to share moments of trauma, how important it is to receive validation to our feeling, our stories, how important it is to continue with our routine and to be strong. In particular, as the vice president of the European chapter of eating disorder, I have to be also a role model. I'm very grateful to my friend, Professor Umberto Azzoni, the president of the European chapter of eating disorder, who encouraged and supported me to come and share the stories and receive support. And I'm very thankful to all my colleagues and friends from the European chapter and the Academy of Eating Disorder who send warm support words. Just imagine a family sitting at home with their small children and grandma, and suddenly a brutal murderer entered their house, handcuffed the children, raped the mother, slaughtered the children in front of the parents, took the 84-year-old grandma as a hostage, and burned the parents with the house when they are still alive. This is just one story. We hear more and more horrifying stories that are difficult to express in words. Such cruelty and brutality has not been known to us since World War II. We lost 1,200 innocent people who couldn't protect themselves. The people in Israel lost their secured-based feeling, lost confidence in their homes. We are strong people who have gone through many difficulties since our establishment. And we have always had a high level of resilience, strength, and hope with such a collective trauma we have never dealt before. Everything is still ahead of us. It's not over. Most of us are still in shelters. We must be strong and need every possible support and solidarity from our friends in the world. Thank you for your understanding. Michal, if you are here, if you would like to say a few words as a representative, the president of the Academy of Israel Academy of Eating Disorder, you're welcome. And then I will start. Michal is not here.
I'm here. I am here, but I can't open my video. So I can just say that these are very hard days for us. We cry a lot. It's more than 1,200 people, and these people are all people that we know. We go to funerals, we go to hospitals, we go to shelters, even though I live out of rage, but I also in rage from time to time, so we have to go to shelters. We transferred all patients in hospital to shelters or released them home if it's not necessary. In the last 6 days, mental health therapists, including me in person, treated many people suffering from acute stress reactions. We also see reactions in people already suffering from PTSD from earlier events. Hundreds of families suffering from loss of their loved ones and homes. Our kids don't go to school. They have to stay home. Maybe you can hear an airplane here from my earphones. There are 3 main reasons for doing these webinars today as planned. First, our health system and academy are strong and we show great function even now. Second, unfortunately, eating disorders stay active in war. They stay active in wars and even get worse, so we can't stop paying attention to that. We still need to treat and teach eating disorders even now. Third, the webinar main issue is about regulation of fake pictures. Sometimes that is extremely important, and especially these days, because we have to notice that there are terrible pictures and videos that are shared and published, and we need to be extra careful with this information, not just for models, but for every picture or video that we receive, and we have to check it very well. So I'm very happy that this webinar can go on as planned. And thank you all for your solidarity. It's very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michal. Okay, I will start. So as Umberto said, I'm going to talk about how we addressed eating disorder and try to do a prevention program through legislation, what we call the Israeli model law. I would like to thank my friends and colleague, Professor Umberto, for organizing the webinar for the European chapter of eating disorder, my colleagues from the European chapter, and our dear Alisa Meyer and Wen Ganon for their assistance and help all the time. This is my colleagues who are collaborating with me in this project that was took place a long time, and we published 2 papers. This is the member of the Knesset, foreign member of the Knesset, Rachel Adato, and this is my student that conducted the follow-up research, and Diane understanding that inspire us to write the paper about the process. Just to show you where we are located, Israel is a very, very tiny country in the Middle East, surrounded by Arab countries, and very, very tiny and small next to the Mediterranean Sea. It's as small as, even smaller than New Jersey, just to give you a proportion. So this is the University of Haifa, where I'm affiliated with, and the Rambam Medical Center, where I used to run the Eating Disorder Center. So Israeli cuisine is known for its diverse flavor, fusion of culture influences, and emphasis on the fresh ingredients and the Mediterranean diet. So we are very famous for the falafel, for the breakfast, the halva, etc. The question is, when we are talking about food, how it is reflected in eating disorder, how it is reflected in disordered eating pathology in the Israeli society, and how we targeted the problem in order to prevent it, and what was the impact of this intervention so far. Just a moment, something went wrong. Let me see what it, okay. So just a brief introduction to take you into the etiology of eating disorder, which is multifactorial, including genetic, personality, family, social values and expectation, and of course the media. Sociocultural norms, particular media, contribute significantly to the development of eating disorder and disordered eating pathology. So let's start by understanding the impact of the media and the culture value on the women's body throughout the history. So throughout the history, women have been asked to conform to impossible physical standard that was harmful to their body. Let's go back to the 19th century, where the beauty norms was narrow wrist, and they used the corset in order to get it. So look what happened to their internal organs. And of course, most of them couldn't breathe after having the corset. The underlying beauty norms and messages is to be gentle and to be fragile. And if you are fainting, you are the most beautiful of all. To this date, women in rural areas of China are required to fit into impossible small shoe size. They do not fit a normal size foot, and of course harmful to their ability to walk freely. It's as small as a cigarette pocket. The beauty norm was to have a small foot. The toes are folded inward and the foot become deformed. And it's happened when they are 4-year-old. The underlying beauty message is, don't walk too fast and don't walk too far from home. Another example is the long neck tribe in Thailand, in northern Thailand, that they are required to add 1 ring every year to their neck from birth. Again, a beauty ideals that are harmful to the woman's body. And the underlying beauty message is, don't look around, because when you reach puberty, you gain 14 rings, and if you are looking too much around, they will take off this ring, and you know what will happen. So another many example that I will not repeat, but just to show you that we are talking now, even after the women sleep, about another version of the same tendency. This is the modern way of trying to adapt to an unrealistic body size. Again, a symbol of beauty that's harmful to the women's body. The underlying beauty message is don't take up too much space. Women have suppressed their body to conform to the values and social perception of their time. While social perception have varied across different areas of history, they share a common emphasis on how a woman's role was defined and what society expected of them. Don't breathe, don't move too fast, too far, don't know too much, don't look around, don't make up your mind, don't think of yourself, don't express your opinion, and of course, don't take up too much space. Women are asked to be submissive, pleasing, nurturing, quiet, delicate, and pretty. Thus, women have internalized their distress and expressed it through their bodies. Men, on the other hand, externalize their distress, often expressing it through violence and aggression. Eating disorder and disordered eating are a current expression of women's psychological distress. We see the same pattern repeat itself in today's modern world, wherein once again the language of distress manifests itself in a beauty ideal that are harmful to the woman's body. Today, Western culture encourages women to adhere to the skinny look, which ignores women's natural diversity or body shape. For most women, this ideal is an unrealistic goal to try to attain. As a result, women suffer from body dissatisfaction, an unhealthy obsession with thinness, use of harmful means of weight control and dieting. When adolescent girls who are at a crucial developmental stage feel pressure to conform to the thin ideal, and in many cases to develop disordered eating or eating disorder. So eating disorder is not about food, not about shape, not about weight. It's an expression of distress. The full spectrum of eating disorder represents the language through which a growing number of women today express their emotional distress. So the thin ideal becomes the new identity, the new measurement for self-worth, meaning when I'm thin, I'm worthy, I'm valuable. The body, food, and appearance become the medium through which women express their identity, their worth, and their distress. At the same time, a new social value system was forming in the West, a value of perfectionism, successful, materialism, eternal youth, and control. Like the thin ideal, these goals are also impossible to achieve. So the cry for help expressed through eating disorder and disordered eating is, I am not enough. That is, I am not in control. I'm never good enough. I am not worthy enough. I am not successful enough. The media has always been very influential in creating behaviors, values, beliefs, and feelings. Research has repeatedly shown the media's negative influence on the development and maintenance of eating disorder and disordered eating. Adolescent girls and young women are the main consumers of this kind of media, which is why they become trapped in a vicious cycle around the aspiration of thinness. So which social mechanism used in the media to influence the use of body as a medium for the expression of distress? There are many social theories, and I will name them, but I will not go in depth. It's the theory of social comparison, the competitiveness, the imitation, the self-criticism, and the need for control. So the wrong message is internalized and become their reality. So this girl who is still developing into a teenager does not understand the difference between reality and their internalized model of beauty. Thus, the thin model becomes the standard in their reality, and sometimes this is not a reversible. The distress is from young age is I am not good enough. It is important to emphasize that not every youngster who is influenced by the media will develop eating disorder. But for most of them, there will be a distortion of reality, and they will attempt to find ways to achieve the ideal thin model. So how it is reflected in the Western society? What did we learn so far about the impact of the mass media and cultural values? A consistent rise in the prevalence of eating disorder and disordered eating, particularly in Western industrialized oriented society. Female patients account for most eating disorder. Eating disorder behavior in male has increased in the recent decade. Males account for 10 to 25% of eating disorder cases, 10% with anorexia, 20% with bulimia, and 40% with binge eating disorder. Of the over 50% of adolescent girls exhibit some form of disordered eating and body image disturbances, and over 22% exhibit disordered eating pathology, which are considered a risk factor for the development of full-blown of eating disorder. So how it was reflected in the Israeli society that pushed us to go into a prevention, a global and a big prevention project. Israel ranked amongst the first in the world for prevalence of dieting behavior among adolescents. 60 to 8% of female adolescents report body dissatisfaction and a desire to lose weight. 22% of teenagers in Israel evidence disordered eating pathology and are at risk to develop eating disorder. Disordered eating pathology among adolescents is 45% that want to lose weight, while 6.1% at risk to develop eating disorder. This is among non-clinical sample. With regard to clinical sample, unfortunately, we don't have yet epidemiological study, but the prevalence tends to be similar to that of the Western world, while the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, research and information center estimates 6 to 8% of girls and young women that suffer from eating disorder. So what to do? So what was the challenge? How to convert the media from being a main risk factor for disordered eating and eating disorder to an educational tool and source of health promotion. This requires a collaboration of experts from varied fields: science, research, art, culture critics, business people, and of course, politicians. We decided to focus on politicians to make a real change in social policy. With this objective in mind, we turned to the Israeli parliament, which is called Knesset, and asked to enact new legislation. So the result was that the Israelis pioneers tackling the unrealistic media matrices via legislation. We are the first in the world. In December 2012, the Knesset passed a new legislation, and the main focus of this legislation was that the law prohibits underweight models, BMI not below 18.5, in commercial advertising, billboards, TV, newspaper, etc. And the second point is law mandates clear indication if graphic editing reduce model dimension in advertising photos. So what is the process of passing new legislation in Israel? So we have 3 calls, but we have some preliminary steps that we had to do, like creating the proposal bill, creating an outcry among the people, approve the bill, to have a preliminary Knesset approval, and then to pass 3 calls. I will go through the process one by one. First, we approached the Knesset Committee for Welfare and Health to raise the awareness of eating disorder. We contacted the chair of Health Lobby at the Knesset, Dr. Rachel Adato, and invited her to visit all the eating disorder centers throughout Israel so as to provide her with the first-hand knowledge of the issue and increase her understanding of the growing problem we face. It became clear that the committee's understanding of eating disorder had improved. The committee was convinced that the media played a significant role in the development and promotion of an unrealistic and unhealthy ideas of body shape and weight. In addition, they now understand that the internalization of those ideas begins at a very, very early age and may progress into low self-esteem, body dissatisfaction, disordered eating, or full-blown of eating disorder. So the first draft of the proposal bill was created. At the same time, we recruited representatives from the fashion industry who supported the proposed bill. So this is the first proposal, which was much more harsh than the end, but we started with more, we asked for more points to pass. So this is not to allow anorectic look in advertising, and to mention and to declare that this message, this image was photoshopped. Okay, it was must be clearly indicated. This is the same one before Photoshop and after Photoshop. In order to pass new legislation in Israel, 3 phases or calls must be passed. The first phase involved a preliminary revision of the bill and approval by the internal committee. The second phase, which is the most difficult to pass, requires that the bill successfully pass through evaluation by the legal advisor of the Knesset to ensure that there is no violation of rights. Before the last call of the legislation, it is common to engage in intense lobbying. The last phase requires the defense of the bill and the vote by the entire Knesset members at the Knesset Hall, followed by a speech outlining its social contribution. So this is the three calls. At the first call, the bill went on the Knesset committee for preliminary discussion, steering debate among people in the fashion and the magazine industry. Opposition to the bill was mainly around whether the legislation violated freedom of speech and advertising. Model protesting the bill claimed that the legislation violates their freedom of occupation. The subject made waves in the Israeli media, bringing the discussion to a roaring public debate. TV, newspapers, school, and more. Girls with severe eating disorder came to the Knesset, building with wheelchairs from the eating disorder ward, and argued in support of the bill, telling their stories about how the media had affected them. Famous Israeli models recounted stories about their experience in modeling industry and of the eating disorder they suffered from. Others talks about the pressure that there was put on them not to eat and to lose weight, and what they had to do in order to continue modeling. Famous rock musicians joined the protest. Open discussion and protest in blogs. A well-known fashion photographer who promoted many young models in Israel also joined the protest, sharing the type of thing he used to tell young women while shooting them. He expressed remorse and claiming that he wanted to make amends and to change. Finally, the language of bill was moderated and revised in collaboration with professionals and was brought to the first call vote. The first call passed. Between the first and the second vote, there was another public outcry. Professionals from the field of eating disorder and the Israeli Academy of Eating Disorder teamed up to support the bill. The Knesset Education Legal Advisor disagreed to support the bill. They claimed that it violates freedom of occupation, that this social change should be led by a Ministry of Education policy. I met with her, and she accepted my scientific and clinical argument in support of the bill. Therefore, I was invited to testify before the Knesset Legal Committee, which was comprised of 8 legislators. And they asked me to send them all the paper that was a basic for this creation of law. At this stage, as a scientist and clinician, representative, I argued to convince the member of the legal committee that the bill is just. My central argument was that violating freedom of occupation applied only to a handful of runway models. However, not supporting the bill would result in direct and irreversible harm to an entire population of girls who are internalizing unrealistic messages that may hurt their self-confidence, self-worth, and body image beginning at a very young age. And of course, I based it on a research evidence. After a long discussion, the members of the legal committee were convinced that the bill was important. The bill was then passed on in the Knesset committee for the second call and approved. The third vote took place in the Knesset House and was approved by the majority, which is 2/3 of the threshold. The entire legislation process of passing the law took about 3 years. In March 2012, the Israeli parliament became the first government body in the world to pass a new law. And this is the main focus of the law. About the enactment of the law, it was happening only in January 2013. Some of those practices include a doctor, like a family practitioner, must guarantee that a model meet the minimum BMI standard, ensuring that the model is not under the international determined standard for normal weight below BMI 18.5. Photoshop rules requires all advertisement to disclose whether Photoshop was used for the photograph. So what was the law impact around the world? It was a major impact. After the law approved, there was a great deal of support and recognition from around the world for the importance of the legislation. Israel was acknowledged and recognized as the role model for other countries. So even Vogue changed their policy and now was fighting against advertising anorectic girls. Okay, it was very, very important that they fight against it. A new bill impacted a few countries that decided to enact laws or change policy to reduce negative effect of the publics and to protect the models themselves. Changing law and policy happened like in Israel, in France, in Australia, in Spain. Also changing policy in New York. If you would like to read more about it, you can read in our paper. In Britain, in Madrid, in Quebec, Canada, even in billboard advertising in companies, that they mentioned that this image was not restored. This is from Times Square. And of course, Israel honored for the law by the Healthy Weight Week, on the Healthy Weight Week in 2013. We were invited, member of the Knesset, Rachel Adato and me were invited to visit the USA Congress in particular to share with them the obstacle that we had to go through. Is the law being enforced? That's the big question. The main dilemma and challenge during and after passing the model law was its enactment, implementation, and enforcement. The modeling law has no enforcement action and no sanction or consequences to enforce its violation. And this is one of the big limitations of this law that needed to be further worked on. To target the lack of enforcement action and sanction to enforce the law violation, few steps was done. In 2016, an amendment was submitted to the Knesset to improve the enactment. The amendment was not approved at a preliminary discussion stage. Another option was conducted by implementary a class action and submitting it to a court for a year ago by recovered eating disorder patient who suffered from severe eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, for more than 15 years. And she claimed that the media was the main influence for starting the thin process. We decided to do the first study to check what's happened in Israel after 10 years. So it's needed more than one research, but I will share with you the main results. First of all, there is a high public awareness and sensitivity in this issue, and therefore the industry is very careful about deviating the law. This is a result of several public initiatives, including popular TV shows that have stirred much public dialogue after passing the law. So this is one of the TV shows that made by one of the very well popular journalists in Israel. Open discussion and protest in Facebook. Israeli adolescent girl protest against the pressure to be thin and not to eat publicly. So they did a pizza party and they say, we would like to eat it openly and not in the bathroom. Another successful campaign was by one of the Israeli most beautiful and famous model that she joined the protest. And another thing that is the award for changing the beauty ideal standard was received by a very, very famous singer in Israel. And she was performing in the last European song. And she is not in a thin ideal parameter. So she got an award for being a role model for adolescents. So what else should be done? In the legislation level, we have to create and promote healthy role model for minors, prescribe only on purchase a laxative and diuretics for minors, prohibiting the use of models under age of 18, emphasizing the danger of dieting and diet product, prohibit advertising that are degrading to the woman. So this is a dieting product and book, and this is a advertising that degrading the woman. So what else? The follow-up study that was conducted recently and was published tried to answer the question, what is the impact of the Israeli models law in young women in Israel? So the main aim of the study was to assess the impact of the models law on body dissatisfaction, disordered eating pathology, and eating disorder among Israeli young women after 10 years. And to assess the participants' familiarity with the model law, their perception of the law and its impact, and to examine of the level of disordered eating pathology and the impact of model law on women aged 18 to 14 as compared to 25 to 35. Those who are 25 to 35 were teenagers during passing the law, and the 18 to 24 were very, very young at that time. So the main result, the models law had significantly higher impact on youngers versus older. Participants who were higher supportive of the law had lower level of disordered eating pathology. Most participants from both age groups were highly supportive of the models law. Most heard of the models law through media and social networks. A change in belief regarding the influence of the images and public messages of body image were more common among the youngers as compared to the oldest. And it was very interesting, this result. "26% of the younger reported a moderate change in their beliefs about the Sinai ideal and its consequences compared to the older group. Younger reported that the law has greater potential impact compared to the older participant. The older participants were not only less affected by the law, but also felt it is less potential impact comparing to the youngers. It is possible that the older participants have already internalized the Sinai ideal very strongly and other value associated with eating disorder. Therefore, the model's law had little or no impact on them. As for the youngest, there was a slightly more impact, possibly due to the change related to the law. Most participants highly supported the law, even though the law is not enforced. Maybe if the law had been enforced, it would have been a greater impact on the public, and in particular on youngsters. Both age groups expressed the need for increased enforcement and said that the law should be fully enforced. Many participants also expressed the need for additional legislation, mainly including these topics in the school curriculum. So what we learned so far, that youngers are more influenced by the law. They still have higher level of disordered eating pathology. Participants who were highly supportive of the model's law were found to have lower level of disordered eating pathology compared to participants who were less supportive of the law. The model's law should be enforced. Prevention should be targeted mainly to younger population. Thank you very, very much. And thanks for your support in this very hurtful period of life in Israel.
Thanks, Yael. Thanks, Yael. Very amazing presentation. It's very important. I follow your presentation having an enormous quantity of cues, of ideas. And I'd like to discuss with you nowadays, but I invite the people that are with us to put their proposal, their arguments also, their question. I understand that your law is overall to improve the education. And so you have to educate people using also laws. That is important, but in the same time, for many countries, I imagine mine, for example, that it becomes difficult because law is not so followed by the population. You understand, perhaps? This is an attitude for the people like me, like Italian, that understand law something like enemy. And so you have to put inside the heart of the people to encourage them to become more concrete, to understand what happened in advertising. For example, I appreciate very much that the people have to put, if they change the photo using some tools like Photoshop, because this is a fake news. This is a fake news that you introduce not truly life, that they want to change the life. And this is a very important aspect of this kind of law. I have many other questions, but I want to understand if there are people that want to put some question on the chat. Look, what are your thoughts on the fact that a lot of people who were supporting the law, including models of Eurovision representatives, are very thin and still seem to endorse the thin ideal?
Of course, to have a tremendous change, it takes time.
Exactly.
And of course, legislation is not enough. When you do prevention program, you have to target also the education. You have to do some session among adolescents. You have to do some nutritional psychoeducation. So it's not enough. You know, the whole idea of targeting and prevention through legislation is only to raise a discussion about it. So people will be able to talk about it and to dismiss all the fake news that you are talking about. In order for the young people not to internalize unreal messages and to believe that this is a reality. So the changing policy is very, very important. In particular, that's why the enforcement was not so important. What was important is the outcry, the discussion, the open discussion. And even the models that were against the law raises a lot of questions. And it was a lot of debates in the media about it. So I'm not saying that it's enough. It's not enough. Now in Boston, they are trying to use the same technique that we were using. And it's very hard for Americans to pass a law because they don't have the same law system like us in many countries, but they can change policy, which is very, very important, like advertising the derogatory for women, or diet pills to raise an awareness about the harmful of dieting product and diet pills and laxative and diuretics.
Yep, sure. I agree completely. That is very important. But this is a period where we are discussing about the social determinant of health. This is a topic that became more and more important, not only in the eating disorder field, but globally in the illness, in the burden of illness. And so what happened now, you think, from the trauma because the terroristic attack? What is change in the eating disorder? Somebody has in Israel may impact eating disorder and access to the treatment too.
When it happens also during COVID. When you are in a crisis time, like we are facing now, the level of anxiety and distress is very high. And one of the ways to express distress is eating disorder. So most probably we will have a very high increase in the level of eating disorder now in Israel. I'm sure. Likewise, all the mental anxiety and problems. Exactly. Like it was happening all over the world during COVID, which was a crisis time. So now in Israel, I'm sure, as Michal was mentioned very clearly, that we have to work very hard now because it's an expression of distress. And now Israel in a collective trauma. It's not only adolescent.
Surely. Coming back to the law, you underlined that there isn't sanctions for who don't respect it. But we can also open the mind, open the opportunity for people that suffered for eating disorder, that open an action, a legal action against.
So now it's in process. It's in process. Yes, it's in process. I'm sure it will be stopped now with all the events that are going on. Okay. But I think it's a very good idea also to do a prevention program.
In other words, the question in larger sense is to offer for the women more freedom. It is overlapping the legislation to protect people from eating disorder effects and to open the opportunity to female to be like they want.
Yes. That's how I sum up my presentation. Be unique, be yourself.
Exactly. You are unique all the times. Exactly. Me, I appreciate very much this opportunity because in this way we understand what happened in the country of Israel, not only because in these days it's very difficult for them to face the terroristic attack, but also because about eating disorder, they opened the line for everybody to understand that the Parliament also can help us taking the debate about eating disorder openly, more than now. For example, in my country, there's a region, Lazio region. You know that in Italy there are 20 regions that are divided in different social systems. One of them, Lazio, is the region where there is based Rome, are discussing nowadays about the opportunity to introduce a regional law to protect people from the devil that want the thinness like an idol. It produce eating disorders. But there are somebody other that want to put, there are many people here to put question to Yael. Otherwise,
if you don't want to ask me openly, you can always email me, and I will answer privately everybody that has some question, and I will be very happy to send you the papers which was published recently.
Someone asked if you can get the references for the study showing impact as there were actual statistics presented today.
Yes, those who are interested to see the papers, I will be very happy to send you the papers, and I can send you now the references. Just a moment. Here is the references for those who are interested. Just a moment. Here are the references.
Okay. Can you take a picture?
Yes, you can take a picture of that.
Also, exactly. Before closing this session, there's Mikael here. You want to say something, Mikael? Mikael Hazen? You want to say something now, or otherwise? No. Sorry. And so I want to thanks again Yael, because her competence, her determination, that is very important in this moment for Israel, for democracy, and also for eating disorder. Thanks a lot for everybody.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
I am happy to stay with you.
Bye.
We'll have next meeting November 23 on the recommendation to assess LGBTQI people. See you again.
Okay.
Happy to stay with you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye.